Well, might as well buy the game then. Hey, so it's been a minute, but you know what's happened since the last time I made one of these? That's right, new Metroid! Metroid Dread, the first brand new 2D Metroid in almost 19 years. God damn. That's over twice the time from Cyberpunk's first trailer to its release. Oh god, please don't let this be a bomb. Luckily, the gameplay shown so far has actually been pretty good. At least according to people who have played Metroid before. Yeah, sadly, I've never really gotten into Metroid, due to the fact of being poor and not having a lot of Nintendo consoles. Even the consoles I did own that had Metroid games, I just never really cared. I mean, come on, why would I get a game like this or this when I got stuff like this? A strong decision was made that day, and I regret none of it. But now that I actually have the ability to play these games and have like 10 copies of Dread pre-ordered already, I figured why not? I'll be playing the first main series game and working my way up to the most recent. Both to be caught up and ready when Dread comes out, and to see what's changed over the years with this series. Starting with the first one, and... Wow, it just drops you in with no explanation, huh? You're a space bounty hunter, you shoot stuff in space, that's it, good luck. I mean, it's all fine and good to get right into the action, but I'd actually like to know what I'm doing here, so... to the manual I go. Also, while I'm here, I might as well give a bit of background. The original Metroid game, released in Japan in 1986, in North America the same year as an arcade game, and then the following year as an NES title. Fun fact, this game was actually directed by Satoru Okada, the man behind the Game Boy, which is probably why the sequel is on the original Game Boy, but we'll get there when we get there. On that note, story time. In the year 2000, multiple planets from across the galaxy came together to form the first Galactic Federation, ushering in an era of peace. Damn, I know I was only 2 at the time, but I figured I would have heard something about that, but alright. Eventually, in the year 20x5, space pirates got a hold of a life form from the planet SR-388, called the Metroid. They are planning to replicate these life forms and destroy the Federation. The Federation tries to take them down at their headquarters on planet Zebes, but they suck. So as a last resort, they send in Samus Aran, since he is the best bounty hunter there is, and he has cybernetic enhancements that give him superpowers. Alright. To be fair, their final line does say something about their true form being a mystery, but if that's the case, why bother mentioning gender? Whatever. This story summary is going on too long anyway. Fly in, blow the bad guys up, save the day, the end. Though I do give credit for putting a bit more effort in the story than most games of that time period. That said, how's the gameplay? It's a lot more in-depth than I would have guessed with all the collectible power-ups and hidden areas. The problem lies in those hidden areas and mazes though, because no one would be able to figure this out without cheating or a guide. Look at this, the blocks look exactly the same, no one would be able to tell. Which I understand was the point of games back then, being full of a bunch of cryptic shit and whatnot, but still, it's really annoying to not be able to just play and enjoy this game on its own without having to bring up a guide, because otherwise, it's pretty good. Until you get to the bosses, which are also ass. To reiterate, this is the first time I've played a Metroid game, but it isn't the first time I've heard of a Metroid game. So I knew about certain things coming in, like Ridley, the main space pirate dinosaur thing. When this is your first major introduction to a character, you expect big things from that character. Instead, I got... Well, that's disappointing. You know what else is disappointing? Kraid. A bit silly, but the first time I heard about him was in that Starbomb song where he took up 5 screens. I was like, whoa, damn, that's gonna be intense. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm not gonna harp on this too much since, well, there was just a time period. Most bosses in that time period suck. I mean, look at the original Bowser. What a threat. So I can understand the limitations of the time not letting them make a boss battle like they probably wanted to, but at the same time, it kinda stings to hear so much about them only to just see this, and then beat them just by doing this. The only interesting and challenging bosses in this game is the final boss, and frankly I think that's mostly because of the arena. Especially since right before the arena, you have to deal with... Though I suppose the assist trophy of the Metroid probably could have given me a good idea. But, oh well. This does, however, lead into my final and perhaps most crucial criticism of the game. The health is goddamn ridiculous. Okay, so you start out with roughly 30, and the enemies do about 8 damage per hit. Killing the enemies sometimes gives you a drop of about 5 health per kill, which is pretty good for the early game. The problem happens later on when you're still only getting usually 5 per kill and the enemies are doing 20 damage to you, plus your health bar by this point would look like this. Sometimes you manage to get enemies that drop like 20 health per kill, but that is rare. More often than not, it's just these goddamn 5s, and later on when your health bar is in the 400s or so, this does nothing. Especially when every time you die, you start out with 30 health again. Unless you're a frame perfect master at this game, 30 health is going to do nothing for you in the later levels. So every time you die, you have to go back to the earlier parts of the game and just grind enemies for God knows how long. And depending on how high your health bar is, you could spend an upwards of 10 minutes just grinding for health. That is not fun. Now, does all of this ruin the game overall? No, I don't think so. The level design is still fun, finding all the items is still pretty rewarding, but if you really want to be able to have a good time with this game in this day and age, I'd recommend both finding a map for the game and making sure you play a version that has save states. Otherwise, be prepared for a lot of grinding and a lot of backtracking to nothing. It's worth mentioning that this game does have a remake on the Game Boy Advance, but I don't really want to play it right now. Part of playing these games in order is seeing how far they've advanced with the technology available. Playing a remake that was released around the time Fusion was seems like a good way to cheapen both Super Metroid and Metroid II. Speaking of, Metroid II, an improvement in every possible way, but playing it on a keyboard sucks ass. I'll admit I'm a console gamer first. It's how I was introduced to gaming and it's how I'm most comfortable playing games. Not to say I can't play a game with a mouse and keyboard, but unless it was actually made for a mouse and keyboard, I'm probably going to have a bad time with it. This is a prime example of that. I don't know if it was because it was on a keyboard, because it's on an emulator, or if it's just because it's an original Game Boy game, but god damn, I had a bitch of a time playing this game. There was just a lot of different moves and certain enemies in the game that move so fast that they required fast button inputs. And on a keyboard, it just didn't come out right. Now, while that affected my enjoyment of the game, I don't think it affects the overall quality of the game, which honestly I think holds up really well. Released in November of 1991 in North America, Metroid II: The Return of Samus released on the original Game Boy. While released on technically weaker hardware, it honestly included a lot of improvements to the original game. They tweaked the designs of Samus's upgraded power suit so that it looks closer to what it looks like today, and also included a lot of upgrades that would become mainstays like the space jump, the spacer beam, and the spider ball. The final of which being my favorite because goddamn, it just added so much traversal options. I know the space jump technically did the same, but I don't know, for me this one was done way better. The story this time around is actually a lot better too, and a lot more thought-provoking. Look, they even included the fact that she's an actual woman! Following the events of the first game and seeing the threat that the Metroid poses, the Galactic Federation decided to just outright eradicate the entire species. And because they suck ass and can't do anything for themselves, they of course hire Samus to do the job for them. Meaning, this is a Nintendo game where you're hired a gun to kill off an entire species. That is really dark for Nintendo. I'm not sure if it overall surpasses the cosmic horror that is the Kirby series, but either way, that's still pretty damn dark, and does raise certain moral dilemmas. Moral dilemmas that I am not qualified to talk about, so let's get back to talking about the gameplay. It's good. Except when it's not, mostly because of the goddamn controls. Like I said, the keyboard setup really screwed me up with playing this game, but I'm not going to choose to blame the game for that. The game itself added a lot of new elements that were really, really good. Not just in the power-ups, but in the basic level design. For example, you don't have to grind enemies for health or missiles anymore. You can just go to certain areas that replenish all of it instantly. You also have save points now, which as long as you remember to use them, are a huge improvement over the password system. Oh yeah, the first one had a password system. I completely forgot to mention it because I did not use it once. The NES Classic came with save states and I'm gonna use them, damn it! The bosses are also kind of an improvement over the first game. This time around, you're fighting all the different mutations that the Metroids go through while they're growing up. So you have more than just 3 bosses. In fact, you have about 40 bosses. The problem is because of that, a lot of bosses end up being repeated because they're all variations of the same thing. Which from a story standpoint makes a lot of sense. From a gameplay standpoint, it's a little disappointing. Though it's an original Game Boy, I should be impressed that there's bosses at all. Even more so that the final batch of bosses end up being really, really well designed, all things considered. I mean sure, most of them are just repeats of the same one, but the final boss in particular is just... I don't even want to spoil it, it's just really good. If I had to think of one thing overall that makes this game pretty bad, it's the music. The music in the first game was passable. It wasn't anything great, but it was atmospheric. On the other hand, the music in this game Yeah, it's not good. Other than that and my problems with the controls, yeah, I got nothing. This is a really solid follow-up. It's not perfect, but if those two things were fixed up, like in, say, a remake made like 20 years later, I'd probably play the hell out of it again. As it stands, both these games have held up pretty well and are definitely playable in this day and age. As long as you have a few maps so the entire area is all set and ready. And maybe some music. Overall, I give these games... It doesn't feel right giving both these games the exact same score. You know what, it's been a while since I've uploaded anything, it's time to upgrade my review scores. There you go, now it's time to sit back, relax, and get ready to play the best game in the series. And then head back to playing one on an emulator. God damn it! Oh shit, the new Spider-Man trailer dropped. I wonder how—